This is another question that I experienced when I was going through the development search, is that the field is incredibly white. The majority of the applications that we got were, from white development directors. I, as a editor, make it my mission to always be looking for talent who are coming from diverse backgrounds, always trying to find people who are writing for different outlets about our field, but I'm not plugged into the development space. So I kind of just was dropped into it and was really struggling to navigate it and find diverse candidates. So I was wondering if you all had thoughts on why that is. As people go into their searches, they'll probably experience these similar things. And if there are ways or organizations that people should be looking towards that are trying to uplift development staff, fundraising staff that come from diverse backgrounds. Anybody can take this. I think everybody's taken the questions so far.
I'll jump in. I feel like it depends what position is being advertised, the likelihood that that position will be filled by a diverse candidate. Oftentimes when it comes to major gift fundraising or something that's external facing, you typically will look for someone, and this has been my experience, that you feel would, be able to relate or have conversations with someone who's actually given the money at a very high level, in terms of like a philanthropist or, a high net worth individual. And so a lot of times that will equate to a white woman or a white man, and a chief position, who's doing the most external facing work within the organization. And that's just, it's really a dearth when it comes to being able to engage constituencies on a level that is congruent to your mission. So if your mission is saying that, we are excited about having diverse perspectives and diverse vantage points, and we're committed to engaging a full public square, and we're excited about the fullness of the industry and all of the different voices and the stories that are to be told, then that should also be reflective of how you hire. Oftentimes we, as development folks, we get rewarded for telling the worst stories about our organization. Without our organization, everybody would be poor and everybody would, not have anything and all of this kind of thing. But when you have somebody from, different backgrounds, a lot of times you can give other sides of the story that is actually going to help edify your organization and actually coincide with things that you can actually do and commit to. Oftentimes people that aren't connected to the organization itself, they don't understand journalists, they don't understand the industry itself. They might make promises to certain philanthropists that, hey, we can do X, Y, and Z. And then when it comes time to actually implement or execute, you don't have anybody that is actually going to do those things. And so somebody who is actually intimately connected to your organization, that understands and values the vantage point of that constituency, I think is very important to be the external facing, entity of your organization as well. So I can't stress it enough. It's really a missed opportunity for a lot of groups. And I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area alone.
I mean, the simple answer to your question, Mazen, is institutionalized racism, right? And that we don't have access to money, we don't have access to the institutions that provide money, and therefore those of us, people who raise money are generally by and large white. I think though, what I often talk to clients about, and even this morning, I'm doing a search in Greensboro, North Carolina for an African-American led organization. And I was talking to a young Black man about, and I really try to coach these people because I see a lot of potential. He doesn't have all of the boxes checked with respect to fundraising, but as he was talking, he's done the work. He knows how to make connections. He knows how to organize a campaign. So in some ways, it's incumbent on those of us in the field to kind of talk people through and say, you need to market yourself a little bit differently and use this language, use this lingo, and, position yourself in such a way that shows that you can help the organization reach its solutions with respect to fundraising and set up a campaign, even if where you worked, and he was in a university setting, hasn't necessarily given you that full agency to do that. You're proving to me you've done that just by the language you're using. So, it's a little bit of a grassroots approach, and it's a heavy lift and it's constant, but I do think, I look for the non-traditional fundraiser types because that's where I came from. I came from program. And if I feel like if you know how to write, you're organized, you can keep a calendar and you stay on task and can juggle a lot of balls, then you have potential to be a development person in whatever capacity that might be. So I encourage people a lot to use that liberal arts approach to finding staff who can get the job done. And that widens the scope quite a bit in terms of diversity for folks.
I would just want to jump in and say 95% of fundraisers did not go to school for fundraising. You have Columbia University, you have Indiana School of Philanthropy. There's a couple in between that have certain programs. Georgetown has an executive, certificate, but this is not something we went to school with. You either are born with it or you're not. You know how to make connections, you're confident, those types of things. And I've worked with hundreds of fundraisers, and most of them were unqualified for a lot of the work. You have the personality to get out there and try it, take risks. You can follow up. You have due diligence. You are okay with rejection. You're tenacious, like those types of things. And so, in terms of being able to, check boxes and things like that, is another disservice, especially within our industry. Development folks are really good at fudging numbers and saying, I raised $1 billion at this organization. If you know anything about fundraising, it wasn't one person that did anything, to Lolly's point. Like, we are all in this together, from the program officer to the founder to the executive director to everyone. And so I think, we just have to be more critical. There's somebody that comes up with this nice, shiny portfolio saying, I've been doing this for 15 years and I raised $1 bajillion. They're probably lying through their teeth. How long were they there? They were there for 6 months and they raised $3 million? They didn't. But, we'll go with, okay, well, they got this good recommendation. They looked the part. And, they went to a prestigious school, or they know, this philanthropist in our community. And so we're going to go ahead and take a risk. And then to find 6 months later, they did the same thing to us that they did to the last organization they were with. So I just think, the box check-in and, to say qualifications and things like that, to Julia's point, it definitely has to be more expansive than the traditional approach at every end.
I just wanted to kind of agree and echo some of the things that Kaylan said, that the ideal development director may not have the so-called resume, but they're flexible. They have a good attitude, a take charge attitude. They have a sunny disposition and are really optimistic about what they can do. One part of the question that you asked, Mazen, was why is the industry so white? And, to complicate the conversation a little bit, it is complicated to ask Black and Brown people to go and ask for money, right? Particularly in these majority white industries like philanthropy. But there are so many benefits to making sure that, again, your development director looks like your community, because we have to remember that as much as we have these new news organizations, that we have these new startup storytelling groups, that there are some historic organizations that have mastered raising money within their community. Not all of the philanthropists are white. right? In fact, African Americans give more on a per giving ratio than our white counterparts, right? So if you have a development director, if you have a consultant who is connected to the community, that can go out to your community, and instead of raising $1 million from one person, can raise $1,000 from individual residents who believe in your mission and know that you're serving the community, that's just as effective. And then when you get into the room to have those conversations with philanthropy, with foundations, when that person gets in the room to build those relationships, they can say that we are connected to our community, and it shows because we have this much invested into our success.
I also think that into this point of checking the boxes, et cetera, if you're a rather small organization still, you don't need someone who's a sophisticated person who came out of a hospital or something. And you need someone, I think what people are saying, who connect, who are authentic, represent the community. So you can go into for-profit fields looking for good salespeople. So there are proxies for this talent, and maybe someone who's worked in retail, or who know how to sell, and who are managers of a portfolio of customers. So thinking not development talent, there could be people to open it up to people who've, been selling in a way. I think when you get into, where I see people get afraid of hiring someone who doesn't have a development background, when the numbers get bigger and they need to get bigger numbers soon. And so the executive directors, or boards, or whoever's giving them money, want someone who has a track record, if you can believe it or not is another issue, but or know how, who know the databases and who've done, the research and, the fundraising software and all that, like Razor's Edge or whatever. So, but I think for a lot of these community-based, we are in a very entrepreneurial phase. So you don't need to hire necessarily traditional fundraisers, and you can broaden your, scope and how you look for people. I also think boards are really important. We've touched about that. A development person coming in is working in partnership, and people have said that before. It's not just a one-man person or one person, female, they, whatever, going out and like, okay, it's just my responsibility. It's a responsibility, a culture of fundraising within the whole organization. And that boards really, really can help, with the fundraising and with the person leading that. And so having an effort to get a board that's committed and who's going to open doors for your development person. If you have someone from the community who doesn't have, the traditional fundraising experience, board members can mentor that person, those partnerships open doors to people and networks. So, I think a lot of the fundraising communities is white because people hire people for their Rolodexes. And so if you're a white person and you're like, you might not even have fundraising experience, but your husband is in certain networks or whatever, they'll take a chance on you because they're hiring a Rolodex. So it gets into all that kind of stuff. So I think, a board members also coming on board that are strategic, that everyone is helping everyone else, can really help new people coming into development that represent the community.